One frayed belt could have destroyed a $35 million gold mining season, not a collapsed mine shaft. Not a broken excavator. Not a flooded cut face or a seized engine block. Just a belt, a strip of reinforced rubber that carries pay dirt from one end of the conveyor to the other. A single component. If it failed at the wrong moment during Parker Schnabel's most ambitious season yet, it would have halted every dollar of gold production instantly and left the entire crew watching the season bleed away by the hour. This is season 16. Parker is chasing a gold total that would rank among the biggest in gold rush history. How's it going? Welcome, Matt. Yeah, thank you. It's good to have you back. And there's a lot to do this year, so we need all the help we can get. Definitely. This is the year, huh? Yeah. We need to just shove dirt down those wash plants' throats. It's a long road to 10,000. His operation burns through $100,000 a day in operating costs, whether the wash plant is running or sitting idle. The Klondike's short mining window doesn't pause for repairs. And somewhere on that conveyor line, a belt is already fraying. No one yet realizes how close it is to bringing the entire season crashing down. The Discovery Parker is in the site office reviewing production numbers when the radio call comes in. He's out of his chair and at the conveyor within minutes. I haven't got an issue with the plant right now. So we just want to get it shut down. This will act just like a zipper. If this gets caught on anything, it'll just rip the belt right open. What he sees is worse than he expected. The fraying runs along the left edge of the belt, a section 6 to 8 inches long where the outer rubber cover has peeled away, leaving the internal carcass layers completely exposed. Those layers, the woven fabric plies and steel cable reinforcement that give the belt its tensile strength, are not supposed to be visible. They are meant to stay sealed inside the rubber, protected from gravel, moisture, heat from the drive drum, and the constant mechanical stress of cycling through the rollers thousands of times per shift. Parker crouches down to inspect the damage. The fraying didn't start that morning. It had been developing over multiple shifts. Each load had accelerated the separation. The damaged edge had become a stress concentration point, where normal forces on the belt were magnified into something the carcass was never designed to handle indefinitely. Foreman Mitch walks up beside him. He looks at the belt for a moment and then voices what both of them are already thinking: if that goes mid-run, we're not talking a couple hours down. We're talking a day, maybe more if it jams the tail pulley. Parker stands up. He's running the numbers in his head, and he doesn't like the result. I'll kind of cut a little trough here, 'cause then all this stuff can drain. Wet pay, as you know, doesn't like going up conveyors. No, belts do not like wet material. And this is soup. Yeah. And we can make it so it's not soup. The belt isn't completely finished yet, not technically. The fraying hasn't reached the steel cable layer at the belt's structural core, so it still has tensile integrity on paper. But integrity on paper and safe operation under full production load are two very different things. Under a full load of wet placer gravel, hundreds of pounds per linear foot, the stress at that frayed edge would not remain stable. Every pass over the drive pulley would flex the damaged section. Every heavy load from the excavator would add force to an already compromised point. Failure wasn't a question of if. It was a question of which shift it would happen on. Parker faces two options, and neither is ideal. He could patch it, apply a belt repair compound and a reinforcement patch over the frayed section, keep the plant running, and buy time. The patch would be quick. But it wouldn't fix the underlying problem. If it failed during a heavy run, and the chances would increase with every hour, the belt would still go down, only now it would fail worse. A patched belt that breaks under load could jam in the roller system, shred material into the return path, and turn a planned shutdown into a multi-hour extraction and cleanup nightmare. Or Parker could replace it now, pull the entire belt, thread in the new one, splice it, tension it, and test it. The right choice, but the plant would go dark for at least 4 to 6 hours. On a day when every hour of production counts, 4 to 6 hours feels like forever. Parker looks at Mitch. "Get the replacement ready. We're not patching this one." Mitch nods and gets on his radio. "Why this belt matters." Parker walks back toward the site office and pulls up his production projections. He has been building toward a season total that would place him among the top hauls in gold rush history, a number that demands his plants run at near maximum efficiency from now until freeze up, with no major mechanical failures and no extended unplanned downtime, with Mitch in the long cut, Tyson in the bridge cut, Damon down at Kenyon Stewart's. It's a really good group. If we just move as much dirt as cheap as possible every day, then things will be okay. He had been hitting those numbers. Until this morning, the operation was right on pace. The chain that produces Parker's gold is straightforward, but every link is critical. It starts at the cut face, where excavators dig into the ancient creek bench, layers of gravel, clay, and old stream sediment that have built up in the Klondike watershed for thousands of years. The gold in that material is placer gold, worn smooth and flat by water over millennia, from fine flour gold to small nuggets. All of it heavier than the surrounding gravel and recoverable through the wash plant's water and gravity system. The excavators load the material into the feed system. The conveyor belt carries it from the loading zone up to the hopper, the entry point of the wash plant. From the hopper, it drops into the rotating trommel screen, where high-pressure water breaks up the clay and gravel and washes the fine material through. The fines, the fraction small enough to carry gold, drop into the sluice box. The sluice runs a constant flow of water over riffles. Gold, being denser than everything else in the slurry, sinks and catches against the riffles while lighter material flushes off the end. The conveyor belt is the throat of the entire system. Nothing moves through the wash plant without passing over that belt first. The excavators can dig all day, the trommel can spin, the water pumps can run, but if the belt stops, none of it matters. The chain breaks at its first critical link. Parker checks his hourly gold recovery estimates. On a full production day, he knows exactly what he can pull from the ground. He runs the subtraction: 4 hours of downtime, 6 hours, 8 hours if the replacement goes badly. How far back does this put us? Rick asks, standing at the door. Depends how fast Derek works, Parker replies, and how many more surprises are waiting on that conveyor line. He closes the production sheet and heads back outside to watch the repair. The Klondike clock. The Yukon doesn't negotiate. Every year, the same deadline arrives. Ground temperatures drop. Water lines start to ice up. The season ends whether Parker has hit his target or not. The mining window in the Klondike runs from late spring through early fall. In the middle of it, time feels endless. At the end of it, looking back at every hour of downtime the season absorbed, it feels like nothing at all. Parker is deep inside that window. He isn't building toward peak production anymore, he is in it right now. The season is starting to wind down. It's been difficult. We're well behind this season right now. It's a struggle. It's only going to get worse. In these final weeks, every shift matters more than the one before it because the weeks ahead are growing shorter. The math is brutal and simple. Every hour the belt is down is an hour of gold recovery that does not happen, not this week, not next season, not ever. The Klondike keeps whatever isn't processed. There is no rescheduling that time. No extra shift waiting at the end of the season to make up the loss. What doesn't get processed today never gets processed. His season target, the number on the whiteboard in the site office that the whole crew has been grinding toward since breakup, requires the plant to run nearly every available operational hour between now and shutdown. There is no schedule slack. No buffer for a multi-day mechanical failure. Parker has run enough seasons in the Klondike to know that the budget for unplanned downtime is never as big as it looks in April. By the time you're deep into the season, that budget is usually already spent, used up on a dozen small repairs and half a dozen unexpected delays that each seemed manageable when they happened. The margin that exists right now is exactly the margin that allows for small problems to be caught early and fixed quickly. It does not allow for problems that are ignored until they force the decision themselves. Parker knows this. His crew knows this. It's reflected in how they work, how they walk the equipment lines during shift changes, and how a foreman like Mitch Blaschke stops what he's doing and calls in damage instead of hoping it can wait until tomorrow. That is the calculation Parker is living with as Derek Doyle's crew stages the replacement belt beside the idle conveyor. Every minute they work is a minute the season stands still. Every minute they save is gold that actually makes it onto the board. The plant being dark right now is not the disaster. The plant still being dark at 6 o'clock tonight would be the repair. The plant goes dark at 9:14 in the morning. Derek Doyle has been Parker's mechanic through enough seasons to know exactly what this job demands, and he doesn't waste time. He calls out assignments before the plant has fully stopped spinning. 2 crew members on the tail end, 2 on the head pulley. Derek himself takes the damaged section. The first task is removing the old belt. They cut the existing splice, the fasten joint that holds the 2 ends together to form a continuous loop, and disconnect the take-up tensioner that keeps the belt tight. With tension released, they begin pulling the damaged belt off the drive system, feeding it back through the return path roller by roller. We need dry dirt going up our belts. You can see this material here, a lot of water in it. This is really soupy stuff. When you put this on your belts, it makes a lot of material that sticks to the belt. You know, there's not a lot we can do other than shut down Roxanne. And well, we know Parker isn't down for that. As they extract it, the frayed section comes fully into view. The damage is more advanced than it appeared while the belt was running. The carcass layers beneath the peeled rubber aren't just exposed, they're partially delaminate, with the fabric plies starting to separate from each other along the line of damage. The belt probably had 1 more day of heavy production left in it, maybe less. Good thing we caught it when we did, Derek says, already moving toward the replacement roll. The new belt is staged on the ground beside the conveyor, a heavy roll of reinforced rubber matched to the original specs. Getting it onto and through the system is slow, physical work. The conveyor threads through carry idlers, the rollers supporting the loaded upper surface, and return idlers underneath the frame. At the loading zone beneath the hopper, impact idlers absorb the shock of material dropping from the excavator. Every section of the roller system must be cleared so the new belt feeds through cleanly, no twists, no misalignment. A belt installed with even a slight tracking error will drift to one side under load, rubbing its edge against the conveyor frame and quickly producing the exact kind of fraying they're fixing now. Derek checks the tracking alignment at 3 separate points along the conveyor before feeding the belt over the head pulley. Keep it true, he calls to the crew members holding tension at the tail end. If we have to rethread this, we lose another 2 hours. Next comes the splice. They're using mechanical fasteners, a heavy-duty splice plate system that bolts through both ends of the belt and locks them together. It's not as strong as a heat vulcanized bond that fuses the ends into one continuous piece, but vulcanizing requires equipment and time they don't have on site today. A clean mechanical splice, properly installed and aligned, is rated for full operating load. Derek has installed enough of them to do this one with his eyes half closed. He checks the belt end alignment twice. The two ends must meet perfectly square. Any angular offset creates a hinge point that will fail under repeated flexing. That was the last one. They all look like they're sitting nice and happy. Nothing but the best for our old wash plant friend. Absolutely. This is the most exciting part. Running the thing. Hey, we've been down for 3.5 hours here, but we're ready to fire back up and get loosened. He checks the tension, adjusts it by 1/4 inch, checks it again. Then he begins driving the fasteners. The tensioning process takes 30 minutes. The take-up pulley, the adjustable pulley that controls how much slack the belt carries, must be set precisely. Too loose and the belt sags between idlers, creating impact stress every time a loaded section hits a roller. Too tight and the splice runs hot from friction at the drive drum, degrading the fasteners over time. Derek walks the full length of the belt 3 times, checking sag intervals, adjusting the take-up incrementally, and checking again. At 1:47 in the afternoon, Derek radios Parker, ready to test. Parker calls the excavator operator. A single bucket load, 2 to 3 tons of wet placer gravel, drops into the hopper. The belt starts moving. The load lands on the belt at the impact zone. Every crew member on the line watches the splice. It passes over the head drum cleanly. A second load. A third. The belt runs true, tracking straight down the center of the carry idlers. The splice cycles through the drive system without deviation or heat. Derek stands at the drive pulley and watches it for 3 full minutes without moving. "We're good," he says. Parker is already on the radio to the excavator operator, "Go to full rate." The wash plant comes back online at 1:52 in the afternoon, 4 hours and 38 minutes of downtime from shutdown to full production. In the context of a Klondike mining season, that is almost nothing. In the context of what could have happened, it is everything. The chain reaction avoided here is what does not happen. The belt fails at 2:30 in the afternoon during a full production run. The leading edge of the tier catches in the tail pulley, wraps around it, and jams the return system solid. The sudden tension spike at the drive end sends a shock through the entire belt structure. Hundreds of pounds of wet gravel already mid-conveyance pile up at the jam point and spill off the sides of the frame onto the ground. The hopper, cut off from new feed, empties in minutes. The wash plant, still running, begins processing air. The excavator operator stops digging because there is nowhere for the next load to go. Parker shuts down the entire system. Cleanup takes 2 hours. Pulling the jammed belt from around the tail pulley takes another hour and a half and damages the pulley lagging, a secondary repair that must happen before the new belt can even be installed. Damage inspection of the roller bearings, which absorbed the shock load from the sudden stop, takes another 45 minutes. By the time Derek's crew is ready to start the actual belt replacement, they are already 5 hours into the shutdown and fighting against the approaching end of the production day. The plant comes back online late that night. The entire afternoon production window, the peak hours, the hours closest to freeze up in the season's tightest stretch, is gone. The gold that would have been processed in those hours stays in the ground. That scenario ends with Parker's season total falling noticeably short of his target. The season's final gold weigh-in shows a gap that traces directly back to one afternoon when a belt failed on its own terms instead of on his crew's terms. That is what catching the belt early prevented. Because the damage was spotted and reported, the shutdown was controlled. Because Derek and his crew completed the replacement in 4 hours and 38 minutes, the plant ran for the full afternoon and evening production windows. The season total kept climbing. Parker's target stayed within reach. The difference between those two outcomes is not luck. It is the fact that someone was paying attention during a routine maintenance walk on an ordinary morning. Hey, Mitch, you got a copy? Mitch. Go ahead. We got a belt. You've got to be kidding me. Oh man, that is not good. And made a call that the rest of the season was quietly built on, the lesson in the belt. Parker Schnabel ends season 16 with a gold haul that puts him at the top of the show's production rankings, one of the largest totals of his career. A number that confirms what the crew believed when they started that season: this was the year to go all in, run everything hard, and not let a single hour of the Klondike's narrow window go to waste. The weigh-in gets filmed. The numbers get announced. The season gets remembered for the gold. But the season was saved long before any of that. What does not get discussed is the morning a crew member walked the conveyor line and found fraying on the main belt. What does not get replayed is Derek Doyle driving splice fasteners into a new belt with the season's clock running and the plant sitting dark. The entire operation holding its breath for 4 hours and 38 minutes during a repair that had to go right the first time. What does not get celebrated is the moment at 1:52 in the afternoon when the plant came back online. Parker got back on the radio, told the excavator operator to go to full rate, and the season quietly resumed the trajectory it had been on since breakup. Those moments are invisible in the final accounting. They do not show up in the gold total. They do not appear on the weigh-in scale. But in the most direct and concrete sense possible, they are the reason the record exists. Gold Rush runs on drama, and the drama is real: the big numbers, the big decisions, the season-ending moments when everything is on the line. But underneath the drama, every record season Parker has ever run is built on the same unglamorous foundation: crew members who take maintenance walk seriously, foremen who make the right replacement call when a patch would be easier, mechanics who do the repair correctly the first time because there is no margin for a second chance, and a culture that treats an idle plant as the emergency it actually is. One frayed belt could have destroyed a $35 million season. It didn't, because the right people were paying close attention at exactly the right moment and made a call that the rest of the season was quietly built on. That is the whole story. That is what a record season looks like from the inside. Not luck. Not just rich ground. But the quiet, unglamorous, invisible decisions that kept the machine running long enough to prove it.